Everyone always loves to talk about the NFL draft and breakout players, so I thought I would combine the two. We're going to look ahead towards the 2023 draft next spring, and I'm going to talk about 5 wide receivers who I think are going to break out into college football superstars and could eventually become first-round picks and big names next spring. But before we can get started, nearly 80% of you guys are not subscribed, and we're on the road to 100K, so quickly be sure to hit that subscribe button, smash that like button for the algorithm, and turn on post notifications so you never miss when I upload. Now, let's get started and talk about 10 breakout wide receivers for the 2023 NFL Draft. The first guy I want to take a look at is Jaden Jenkins. LSU has started to produce superstar level receivers the last few years. Guys like Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham, DJ Chark, Russell Gage, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson have all become solid NFL players, and they were all really good while they were at Baton Rouge. Jaden Jenkins is just the next one in line. Coming out of Jena High School, Jaden Jenkins was a 6'1" receiver and decided to commit to LSU. He wasn't as highly touted as some of those names I listed earlier, as according to 24/7 Sports, he was only the number 73 wide receiver and the 448th best player in the class of 2018, which made him only a 3-star recruit. Despite that ranking, Jenkins has had a really good career. After redshirting in 2018, he would catch 5 passes for 67 yards with Joe Burrow as his quarterback, and in 2020, he'd have a new guy in Miles Brennan. There'd be a quarterback struggle all year, but Jenkins still managed to catch 23 passes for 397 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's why going into 2021, he was supposed to replace Terrace Marshall as the go-to guy. Max Johnson ended up becoming the quarterback, and Jenkins would finish with 34 catches for 502 yards and 6 touchdowns. In particular, in 2021, he had 2 games which make me think he could become a superstar. The first one came on October 16th against number 20 Florida, as in that game against the Gators, he caught 4 passes for 50 yards and 3 touchdowns. He set the Gators defense on fire, but that was still not his best performance. Against number 15 Texas A&M, Jenkins would catch 8 passes for 169 yards and 2 touchdowns. That stat line is incredible to begin with, but in case you didn't know, he actually caught a game-winning touchdown pass, which actually helped LSU go to a bowl game. This was by far his best moment of the year, and after catching a touchdown in the Texas Bowl against Kansas State, Jenkins declared for the 2022 NFL Draft. He would later decide to have one last ride in Baton Rouge though, and he will come back for next year. Right now it is unclear who will be the starting quarterback for the Tigers, but with Brian Kelly at the helm, I think he's going to figure it out, and Jenkins could be a name to watch in next year's draft. Purdue has started to produce big-time level receivers. Rondale Moore was an All-American and a second-round pick, and David Bell was an All-American, a Blitnikoff finalist, and a likely Day 2 selection in this year's draft. So, there's going to be someone next up, right? Yes, it's going to be a guy by the name of Milton Wright. Coming out of Louisville, Kentucky, Milton Wright was wanted by a lot of big-time programs and chose to go to Purdue over Kentucky and Ohio State. According to 24/7 Sports, he was a 4-star recruit, the number 30 wideout, and the 204th best player in the class of 2019. Wright would have a pretty good year in 2018. As a true freshman, Wright would catch 18 passes for 288 yards and 1 score. In 2020, he was expected to break out alongside David Bell, and he did to a degree, but he was also disappointing. He finished with 24 receptions for 305 yards and 2 scores. 2021 is when he would finally put it all together. The Boilermakers have a breakout 9-win season, and they are led by their new star quarterback Aiden O'Connell, so Wright had someone to throw him the ball. He'd finished the year with 57 catches for 732 yards and 7 touchdowns, doing this alongside a guy who was a Blitnikoff finalist. In particular, Wright had 2 games that makes me think he's going to be the next big thing. The first one came against Ohio State. Going up against some of the best defensive backs in the country, Wright caught 7 passes for 98 yards and 1 touchdown. But he had one game that was so much better than that. It came against Northwestern. While the Wildcats were terrible last year, Wright caught 8 passes for 213 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. In fact, he almost had a 4th touchdown. This shows me that Wright has all the talent and potential to become a big-time superstar receiver, and with Aiden O'Connell coming back, Purdue's track record at that receiver position, and Wright's talent, I think he's a guy who could become an all-Big Ten kind of receiver, and he already has the measurables to be an NFL player, so let's wait and see how he does next year. In the last 3 years, Bama has been producing extremely high-level receivers. Guys like Henry Ruggs, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, and Jerry Jeudy all became superstars in Nick Saban's offense, but in 2021, we saw 2 other guys break out. One of them was expected in John Mechie, and the other was a transfer from Ohio State who ended up setting the world on fire and became a Blitnikoff finalist as well. His name was Jameson Williams. In my opinion, he was better than Mechie and will be a really good NFL player, but with both Williams and Mechie declaring for the 2022 NFL Draft, Bama will need a number one option for next year. Yes, they have guys like Ja'Cory Brooks and Nagaye Hall coming back, and they brought in transfer from Georgia Jermaine Burton, but personally, I think a guy by the name of Trayshawn Holden is going to become the next big thing. The 6'3" receiver came out of Harbor City, California, and decided to take his talents to Alabama. According to 24/7 Sports, he was the number 42 wide receiver and the 235th best player in the class of 2020, while also being ranked as a 4-star recruit. So far, he's gone under the radar at Alabama, but in my opinion, he's shown enough to make me think he could be a number one option next year. In 2021, he finished with 21 catches for 239 yards and a touchdown, and there are two games that make me think he could become a number one option. The first one was against Mississippi State, where he caught 3 passes for 70 yards and a score, but the second one is 100 times more important, as in the national championship game, Holden caught 6 passes for 28 yards. No, that stat line does not jump off the page, but it tells me everything I need to know. When Jameson Williams and John Mechie were both gone, Bryce Young looked to Holden as the number one guy. Him and Slade Bolden were the two main targets, and if that game showed any sort of glimpse into 2022, it is that Holden's going to be a top option, and I think he has all the talent and all the ability to become that breakout star, and maybe, just maybe, become the next first-round pick out of Tuscaloosa. We'll have to wait and see, though. Josh Doxson, Kavontae Turpin, and Jalen Reagor come to mind when I think about recent TCU star receivers. While none of those guys really had any sort of NFL success, Quentin Johnston could be the guy who finally changes the game. Coming out of Temple, Texas, Johnston actually originally committed to Texas. Eventually, Gary Patterson and the staff were able to flip the 6'4" star receiver to become a Horned Frog. 24/7 Sports was extremely high on his potential. He was the number 14 receiver, a 4-star player, and the 71st best player in the class of 2020. Johnston arrived at TCU with extremely high expectations, and he delivered for the most part as a freshman. With Max Duggan throwing him the ball, Johnston caught 22 passes for 487 yards and 22 touchdowns, and that was a pretty good average of 22 yards per reception. That's why, going into 2021, he was projected to break out for the Horned Frogs and maybe even become one of the top receivers in the conference. So, how did he do? Well, he caught 33 passes for 612 yards and 6 touchdowns, and he put up those numbers while missing a couple games due to injury. Like I've been doing for every other prospect, there are 3 games in particular that make me think Johnston's going to be a star next year. The first one was against Cal. The Horned Frogs won this game 34-32, and in that game, Johnston caught 5 passes for 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. He showed his ability to score the ball, and that was also on full display against Baylor. Coming against one of the best teams in the conference, Johnston caught 5 passes for 142 yards and a score in that game. But like I've been saying, there's always that one game that makes me think this guy is going to be legit. That came against number 4 Oklahoma. Just like I was saying about Milton Wright, against the best defensive backs in the Big 12, Johnston went off. He caught 7 passes for 185 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Sooners, and while they lost this game by double digits, Johnston showed what kind of player he could be, and if he's performing at even half that level next year, he'll be an all-conference player and will be in the running to be an All-American. In only 8 games, this guy had 33 catches for 612 yards and 6 touchdowns, and had he played a full year, he would have likely been an all-conference dude. When I look at mock drafts for next year, he's already projected as a day 2 selection for the 2023 NFL Draft, and he can improve that stock to round 1 if he has a great year in Sonny Dykes' new system. I am super pumped to watch him. For the final prospect in today's video, we're going to talk about Jaden Hazelwood. Arkansas recently had Treylon Burks, who is going to be a first-round pick in this year's draft, and maybe Jaden Hazelwood can live up to all his potential and become a first-round pick as well. Coming out of Cedar Grove High School in Georgia, Hazelwood originally pledged to stay home and play for the Georgia Bulldogs, but after some time to think it over, he eventually flipped to Oklahoma. This guy was a big deal. According to 24/7 Sports, he was the number 1 receiver in the nation, the number 1 player in the state of Georgia, and the 4th best player nationally. He was a 5-star in the class of 2019 and the 133rd best recruit of all time. But so far in his college career, he's been a little bit underwhelming. In 2019, as a freshman, he caught 19 passes for 272 yards and a touchdown, but 2020 was really tough as he was hurt. He would try to bounce back in 2021 to save his draft stock, and he had a decent year. He caught 39 passes for 399 yards and 6 scores, but really only showed his potential in 1 game. This came against TCU. He caught 6 passes for 56 yards and 3 scores in that game, but in a lot of their other big games, he was a non-factor. That's why when all the changes happened in Norman this past offseason, he decided to enter his name into the portal. He ended up deciding to go to the SEC, where he will join Sam Pittman at Arkansas. They have an established quarterback in KJ Jefferson, and Arkansas is one of the top up-and-coming programs in the country, and with the void left by Treylon Burks, Hazelwood has the opportunity to step in, become that #1 receiver option, live up to all that potential, and become a high-end draft pick. I'm really excited to see what he's going to do next year, but as of right now, all 5 of these guys are huge what-ifs. They've all shown potential, but none of these guys are projected to be top-end prospects just yet, but I think all 5 of them have the ability to do so. What do you guys think, though? What do you think of each prospect? Who is someone you think is going to break out into a star in 2022? And what topic should I do in my next video? Be sure to let me know down below, smash that like button if you want to support today's video, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.